Welcome to the Miracle Mentality. Because of you guys, we continue to be in the top 10 on every platform you can imagine. So thank you for being loyal people to the Miracle Mentality and doing what they all say, to share, to like, and tell a friend. And today I have one of my best friends for almost 3 decades. And that's amazing because we're both so young, but about 3 decades. But I'm going to read what I wrote. I put, today I get the chance to interview one of my dear friends, Brent Bolthouse. If you know anything about Hollywood nightlife, then you know about Brent. He didn't just participate in it, he shaped it. And I always tell people that. He built environments where people felt alive, connected, and inspired with his creativity, his integrity, and his consistency. And for a world of nightlife that moves fast, he's learned to live at a very good pace. And we're going to talk about that today. Good to see you, Brent.
Good to see you, Tim.
It's exciting that I'm doing a podcast, right?
It's pretty cool. Yeah. I think it's such a amazing medium.
Yeah.
You know, I was driving over here, and I remember in my early 20s, I stumbled across Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Right? And then he had this thing that you could sign up every month, and you'd get he'd send you cassette tapes of which were he called them power talks, and it was him interviewing somebody interesting. It was Deepak Chopra, it was Wayne Dyer, all these pillars of the community. And I was thinking that's was the first podcast. Tony Robbins did the first podcast where he really was small interviews they're about an hour. And I remember, I think there was 20 in the series. I listened to every single one of them, but people that's where I learned about the 1 Minute Manager, Mark McCormack, so many.
I remember you went wild. You had a time, and you even showed me the Tony Robbins things that you had, but it really did make an impact on your life.
Yeah. He obviously is such a great motivator, such an amazing communicator, such as yourself, that he really, it was just, I was always hungry because I'm a high school dropout. I always was educating myself through Audible. Before Audible existed, I was doing books on tape, and it was cassette tapes, and that's how I would consume information.
Yes. So I want to talk to you a little bit about staying steady in unsteady times. So let's go back into the nightlife days. So you literally start in that at what age?
So I started at 19, and I moved to Los Angeles at the age of 17 to get sober. And I had a profound spiritual experience in rehab. I turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood God.
Yeah.
That's the third step in the 12-step program. And to me, that was Jesus, because that's all I ever knew about spirituality, was growing up in a very fundamental Christian home. And I had a cross appear on my left arm. I had a 3-dimensional triangle appear on my right arm.
Yeah.
And I had a white light experience in rehab. And everyone in rehab saw these manifestations on me. And, it was, and before that moment, I was talking to my friends because we had payphones. If you don't know what payphones are, just ask ChatGPT. They'll show you a picture of a payphone. And I was like, okay, because I was a crystal meth. Crystal meth is what I really did. And I was like, okay, I'm done with crystal, but let's do some mushrooms and let's smoke some pot when I get out.
Yeah.
I was ready for that. Or maybe I could have some beers. And that experience happened, and I've been sober ever since. And, God willing, November 15th, I'll have 39 years clean and sober.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so from there, I stumbled into Los Angeles because a kid in my rehab that I shared my room with, his father had a halfway house in North Hollywood. So that could have been San Diego, that could have been in Phoenix, that could have been anywhere in America. And so it just happened to be in North Hollywood, and that's how I made my way to Los Angeles. So I always say that I didn't plan to do what I do. I didn't plan to be some nightlife entrepreneur, business guy. I was God clearly had a plan, because I couldn't have seen my future, nothing even close to the life
I think
I've
it's
had.
so interesting because I think some things in life you decide and some things you discover. And you really got into this discovery side that just kept leading you to really cool things.
Yeah. I mean, again, and so as I came out of Joshua Tree into Los Angeles, at 18 years old, I slipped a disc in my back, couldn't walk, thought I was going to be handicapped. It was one of those moments where what I call now, but looking back at it at this time, I didn't know it at this time, but it's just like, I made a deal with God.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, okay, if you can just heal me, I'll go be a missionary in the Philippines for you. I'll go feed the homeless. I was just like bargaining, making deals with God, and but really what that is in my interpretation of that is this really true moment of surrender, where at a molecular level you say, okay, I got to the point where I was just like, God, if I don't walk ever again, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's just move forward. Let's take it one step at a time, and I'll be okay. And I won't be resentful or bitter or ungrateful. And I did that, and literally had surgery, had another spiritual experience in that surgery. But we'll save that for another time because we don't have all the time in the world. And then literally that was in December.
Yeah.
By that next March, I'm doing my first nightclub, promoting my first nightclub, which I wasn't looking to do. I didn't plan to do it. I was like on a trajectory to be a hairdresser. I was going to hair school and
remember that.
Beat Sassoon, taking color classes and things. And so I literally was like, I'm on this trajectory, and I fell into this nightlife world really by so many weird coincidences. Like when I read Malcolm Gladwell's book,
yeah,
I was like, oh, I'm an outlier. Right place, right set of circumstances, right conditions for perfect.
Yes.
Right. And I was like, that was me. I was sober. I picked a venue. There was no other parties on that night. They had parking, all the things that I check now as being 35 years in the business. But back then I didn't know it. I didn't know what to check. There was no to-do list of like, okay, here's the things we need to make a successful night happen.
Yeah. I find this so interesting. Chance. So were you doing any research on the quote unquote competitors of other people that were doing nightlife in a big way?
No, not at all. For me, it was literally because I started as a promoter, so we would promote these nights, and then I stumbled on doing something every Wednesday night, and it was literally like we stumbled upon it and we did it, and it became the it club of the summer.
Yeah,
like Drew Barrymore was my cashier. The Beastie Boys were in there with these other guys buying that were 45s, and they had the best 45 collection on the West Coast, and it had Mike Messick's DJing in the main room, and I'm standing outside the Sunset Athletic Hollywood. It's the Hollywood Athletic Club now. Yeah. That's what it was. At that time it was Sunset Marquee. No, it wasn't Sunset Marquee. Cancel that. It was the Hollywood Athletic Club always. And there was a line around the corner wrapped around, and I'm looking at, there's like Emilio Estevez in line, and then there's Robert Downey Jr. in line, and there's this person, that person. And like, this is like coming out of the 80s. I'm just looking at, oh, there's the Brat Pack is like, and I would just pinch myself going, what's happening right now? This is super surreal. Because a few months ago, I was like a kid from Joshua Tree that had 2 friends.
Yeah. So what do you think part of the secret sauce is? Because, I say a lot that favors on the person, like God's favor, and favors also on the path. So you start to follow this path, and this favor, these blessings start coming into your life. But for those that are watching or listening today, and they're looking for this kind of break,
yeah,
why do you think these breaks started happening for you, that the biggest stars in the world started to come to your clubs?
I don't really know exactly what that formula was. Obviously, being friends with Drew at a young age when she was getting sober and I was getting sober was certainly helped, right? Because obviously she was already quite a celebrity. And then I think when I stumbled into this, I always had this mentality that like this was a business. And somehow in that first club that I did, I saw a path through young Hollywood. I just saw it. It was like a path through the forest. And my other partner I started with, this guy, Tafu, he went into the EDM space and did underground clubs downtown, and he's still around and he's awesome. We talk all the time. But it was like, I saw that path, and then it was like, okay, I saw that there could be maybe a career there, right? So then it was like, okay, how do I bring integrity? Because I'm newly sober, and having integrity was such a big part of my early sobriety. It was like, how can I bring some integrity to this space that typically is pretty seedy, a lot of bad characters, a lot of bad things happening. And I really sort of like, how do we treat it and take care of people? So I think one of the things that helped us in that journey was we met a bunch of young kids coming through our doors. And one day they're helping us do mailers and handing out flyers for the nightclubs, because that's what we did in the 90s. And next thing you know, Scott Weiland's like winning Grammys, right? And so you're just like, and we were really great to a lot of people earlier in their careers when they were nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they became somebody, they remembered that, oh yeah, this crew, meaning the team that I had assembled, was like, took care of us and liked us. I think that goes a long way.
It does.
I think it reverberated throughout that small community in Hollywood. And I think we also, made it safe for agents and managers and publicists. Like, if you go there, they're not exploitive. Like, that was important to me. Like, we didn't allow cameras in our clubs, photographs. We weren't exploitive, and we weren't selling stories, tabloid stories. And we were just like, I remember, this is late into my career, but like, I remember I would do parties for Prince.
Mm-hmm.
He would do like a show at the House of Blues, and he'd do an after party with me somewhere. And we had many conversations, which he just loved to talk about his grandma and Jesus. That's all the guy wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
but I remember we did a party once. He played the Hollywood Bowl, and we did a party for him at one of our places afterwards. And literally, it's like midnight. The show's been over for 2 hours. Yeah. He's still not there. And literally, like, I mean, everybody was there. Eddie Murphy, the Wayland brothers. Like, it was like,
yes,
it was like Hollywood royalty was there. And they're all coming to me and went, well, tell him I came by. Tell him what, thanks. And like, Prince literally rolls in around 1:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Most everyone's gone. He's there. He has all his dancers and like a crew of his friends. And all that guy did from 1 until 5 in the morning, he was on the dance floor. And I said, Prince has been coming to my clubs for years. I've never seen him on the dance floor once. I mean, and this is like a decade of coming to my stuff. And I was like, that's just a club kid that wants to go let loose on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And just him being who he is in the world, he can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a loss to him.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, what a moment that I got to create this bubble where he could actually do something that he loved to do, because he was literally sweating, shoes off, barefoot, shaking it up. And it was like one of those beautiful moments where it was like, wow, this makes this weird job I have awesome.
But I think you're going there in the conversation that you created a space where he felt comfortable by knowing you, by knowing your style. So let me read one of my questions. I say, Brent, the nightlife world can be loud, distracting, and sometimes unpredictable. What kept you steady when everything around you was moving so fast?
Well, one of the things is I really never experienced doing drugs or alcohol in like a nightlife experience in a bar. We were little desert rats from the Joshua Tree that were like getting high in a field or in a car or in a burnout house in the middle of the mesa. So I didn't have this romantic going up to the bar and getting a Mai Tai. So there was no romance in it for me. So it was that was like, okay, that's business. This to me was business. And so I always tried to stay true to that and think about that. And then I think the other thing that I did consciously was I knew my place in that world.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not necessarily friends with every celebrity. They were customers of ours, right? And we treated them as customers, and I didn't try to like be best friends with them. Now, some of them over the years, we developed friendships, of course, but like I had that boundary of like, I wasn't trying to be a sycophant, and be like, oh, I gotta sit with this guy and I gotta be with him. We'd be like, let them do their thing. And I think there's something that helped me stay steady and not
totally believe that.
Get sucked into that world. And I did at some points in my career, and what we can touch on is I definitely lost my way. I got lost.
Yeah.
I had dark times, but it was always, I think that course for me was also having a 12-step program that really kept me in that space.
Yeah.
And knowing that worked, but I've definitely strayed for sure.
I think that you have always honored people. And I think that sometimes people don't want to be adored, but they do want to be respected.
Yeah, of course.
And I feel like when they came into your clubs, there was a respect, there was an honor, and you would, shake their hand and then give them their space.
Yeah.
To do what they do. But I remember walking into Hyde in the 90s, and how many people did Hyde?
Hyde held 96 people total.
96 people
in the whole room. If we're packed, it was like 115 people was packed in there.
And the people that you would see there was just mind blowing, from this like older actor.
Yeah.
And then the biggest hip hop star to the newbie coming. Like every corner you'd come around, you'd see something super creative.
Yeah.
And that was like night after night after night, with DJ AM as your DJ.
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah.
You also DJing sometimes?
Sometimes I would DJ at Hyde, yeah. Yeah, and Hyde was an interesting, that was such a small place and it was so white hot, and we had to say no to so many people because of the size. Like it wasn't because we wanted to, like I tell this story, there was this terrible, it was, the media can be so mean, right? There was this time where like Tara Reid was rejected at Hyde. And the truth is, she's Canadian. She's friends with the Canadian professional hockey players, and she rolled up with like 15 hockey players. And we're just like, Tara, we can't let 15 hockey players in at 1 o'clock. I've actually
seen the video, yes.
Like it was like late in the night. There was no room. We could barely get her plus one in. And so we said, hey, we got to lose a few people. So she walked away, and then she ended up coming back and coming in with just like a couple people.
Yeah.
But the media turned that into that she was rejected. We didn't let her in, and this story ran. But it was terrible because it wasn't the true story, right? There was more to it, and there was a reason that we weren't letting her in, and she wasn't going to abandon her friends and just go in, right? So but that was one of those stories that came out of that time. That was
the thing is, because you're so low key about this, but when you think about it, the behind the scenes side. Because you were friends with Paris Hilton since she was young. And then when she started rolling around with Kim Kardashian, who no one knew at that time, that was all Hyde.
Yeah.
When Britney Spears was coming in, you'd see her with Paris Hilton. That was all Hyde. All that paparazzi was always at Hyde.
Yeah, the mid 2000s was that Hyde for like 3 or 4 years was just like incredibly.
Mm-hmm.
Was I think the line in the sand that changed everything. That's before cell phones came into existence during Hyde. Harvey from TMZ stood outside of Hyde and built his career from standing out there.
Like literally.
Literally. He was out there with a camera. And then they opened offices across the street at the 9000 building where Crunch Fitness is, across from Hyde. So, but I think before Hyde, like, you could go out on a Monday night and it could be everyone from Cameron Diaz to Bono to Prince. And like, just on a typical Monday night, it was just like, okay, that's cool. And then Hyde got crazy. You had the internet stuff. You had the girls. You had the, Britney Spears getting out of the car with no panties on. And all that happened at Hyde. And, and I think you had that thing where things weren't secret anymore. Like we couldn't take people's cell phones from them, but we could take their cameras from them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the world changed radically at Hyde, where I think publicists were like, it's not a good look to go to those places. Like the world shifted somewhat.
Yeah. Tell me about your gift to read a room. So one of the things that I see about you as a friend is that you like to stay in your own space and you kind of study a room, and you seem to have some type of gift to discern people. I think you're always looking for the positive in them, but you're very good at reading a room. Do you think that that started even when you were young? Talk to us about that.
I mean, my origin story is I was adopted at birth. And my parents are they're from Illinois. They're middle-class people, hardworking, beautiful, lovely humans that are as kind as the day is long. I don't know. And I had this thread of like creativity and interest in music and architecture and fashion and design, which they didn't give me. So that came from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think one of my superpowers is I understand the way a room works really well. My CFO says I can see around corners.
You can.
See what's coming next, right? And so, and some of that is instinct, right? I think there's that part where I just can go, yeah, it feels like this feels good. Now let's, some of the things we do today as opposed to a long time ago was like, we'll do it, looks good, then we'll run some numbers against it and see if it performs out and if it makes sense. But a lot of times it was like, we would go into these like Joseph's on Mondays was this Greek restaurant. Yeah. Like, why does a Greek restaurant need to be the hottest place on earth? It doesn't. On paper, it sounds ridiculous, but we turn that into this really hot place for like, and I think what this generation doesn't have is we would do nights like that Mondays lasted like 5 years. Mm-hmm. Like you would come back and forth from New York like over years and be like, oh yeah, we still go to Mondays. We still do Joseph's on Mondays.
Oh yeah.
Which is unheard of in this day and age.
I'm introducing to you for the first time Global SKU. It is an app designed to help you make extra money for stuff that you have just sitting around. Now, how does that work? Number one, it only costs $12 a month and you can cancel anytime. What happens is that you scan an item and it tells you what the item sold for in the last 90 days. And it lists across multiple platforms, including eBay, Amazon, Walmart, Facebook, Marketplace. This is amazing. That's Global SKU. Go there and find out more on how this can work for your life. Go to the Global SKU website or the App Store and start making money today. But I have something really good for you. For the first 50 people from my world that comment, watch, I'm going to give you Global SKU for absolutely free for 1 month. For the first 50 people that comment, I'm going to give you Global SKU for 1 month. Help me with something with your personality of how you have the ability to go quiet. So there's actually a book called Quiet. I've done a lot of research on what people would call the introvert. And it's really not an introvert. It's just a person that likes to stay still and stay quiet.
Yeah.
When did that start in your life?
I mean, I think part of that is a little bit of, I think in all honesty, I think part of it is a wound. Mm-hmm. I was adopted at birth. My mother never held me. So I started my journey at life of like confusion, right? And so, and then I had this reoccurring theme with my parents sometimes where there would be like religious confusion, where it'd be like, Jesus said to love everybody, but these guys with mohawks, you're not supposed to love them? Like what's happening? Like, and so I found this space, and as a kid, my dad would move around for better jobs. You get promotions. So we were always kind of packing up and leaving. So somewhere in there, I found that like connecting with people too deeply wasn't safe. Yeah. So then I had to have this own internal place where I'm shy by nature. I'm a little bit of an introvert, and like I like to nest and not leave the house. Mm-hmm. So it's just trying to find the healthy balance between what is nesting and being quiet and still that's healthy. And then I think there's a line where it's not healthy, right? So it's just really trying to find that balance. But I do think, yes, being able to like put the phone down, not scroll, not doom scroom, and just be like, like, trust me, sometimes it's hard to put it all down and be present with my son because we all love a distraction.
Yeah. So what was it like to start to get financial success? I remember the first time I spoke somewhere and they gave me a $50 check, I tried to give it back because my whole thing was like, I'm doing this, I'm a humanitarian. Why are you giving me money? No, it's from the foundation. I go, no, take it back. No, this is for you. it was hard for me because I was kind of, trained to think a different way. And then when money started to come to me, that also felt a little foreign. How was it for you when money started coming your way?
I mean, my first job in LA was at a mobile gas station pumping gas. I was making minimum wage in the 80s. Cigarettes were still $1 a pack. You know what I mean? So I think when I did that first club and I think we made $500, I was like, what the heck is happening here? I can work 2 weeks and make less money. So it was like, it was odd. And being from a working class family, so my dad, we never talked about money or finance. He always provided for us. We always had everything that we needed. And he, to this day, my mother just passed this past year, and like my dad, everything was set up. Everything was covered. He's got the will. He's got my dad is so great at just setting everyone up so that there's no burden. But yeah, it's taken me, it's still something I work on to this day of like money is such a, money, sex, death, like all the things that we're not supposed to talk about. But yeah, it was a weird thing where I had to learn the value of money, what it was, how not to overspend and how to steward that. And so, yeah, at that early age, like I remember, at some point I was bringing trash bags home full of money, $20,000, $25,000. And you're like, what? In cash bills, $20 bills.
Yeah. There's an interesting humility about you in the area of money. I think about that one house you had. It was on a hill. It was done by a famous designer, architect.
I lived in a John Lautner house.
That house was amazing.
Yeah, it was an amazing house, yeah.
But it took the right eyes to do something with the interior of the amazing. So if you go to any of your restaurants, they're called the Bungalow. Mm-hmm. And I was just in one just a few weeks ago. When you go there, you do everything. You help design everything.
Yeah.
Where did you get that eye for design?
I think obviously working in hospitality for as long as I have, you kind of see what works and doesn't work. And I said, one of my superpowers is I think I know what people like. Mm-hmm. And I think what we do with the bungalows, which are lounges that serve small bites of food, but really we are a cocktail lounge, is it's rooted in a sense of home. It's supposed to feel residential in some regards. So it's supposed to feel like a fun house party.
Yeah.
And that was all by design. We wanted to create something that felt a little bit different. And then we always find a mythological muse, like who's driving this, like who lives here in this city, like what is this? And we kind of go into each community and think about what does that community need? Mm-hmm. We do some research and we do some study and be like, okay, Long Beach needs this, or Huntington Beach needs that, or Santa Monica needs this. So it's just like looking at those different needs that a community has and then trying to bring something. What we try to do there is become like a community clubhouse that is nicer than your neighborhood bar that's been there for 50 years. And it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah. And with the way you decorate and also with the fact that you like trees. So you put like a big tree in the middle of it.
Yeah, we love nature. We love trees. I love design, like the design development phase of building bungalows is my favorite thing. We're starting a new one now. We haven't announced it yet, so I can't say anything. But it's exciting. Just that I haven't done that since before COVID, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a part of the job I really love.
Yeah. So you created one of the greatest spaces, I think, in the world. The bungalow approach and the bungalow way. So many people, when I mention your name, they always go, the bungalow. Yeah. So it's interesting how you do this, but let's talk about pausing for applauding. That's a Robert Schuller saying. He said, you need to pause to applause. Are you able to do that? Or do you just go from one thing to the next? Do you ever take time to celebrate your wins?
Yeah, of course you have to. You have to celebrate your wins. You have to pause and disconnect from the real world and, really just be here present. And, so I do pause. I try to stay in a moment. I always try to stay in gratitude. And And I've learned over the years, because as you know, I've had terrible dark times. And sometimes it's like, I have to remember that, like, I have to stay humble and like be grateful, because there's a lot of people that have much less than I do.
Yeah.
And I'm always striving, somewhere I got this entrepreneurial drive in me to always move the ball forward and always get back on the horse. Like, that's one thing my therapist, John Kenyon, says. He's like, your magic power is you get punched in the face hard and you get back on the horse and keep going.
I like that, because you even taught me that. That's the thing about us as real friends. We've been there with each other through relationship challenges, financial challenges, success challenges, bad choice challenges.
Yeah.
We always have reached out to each other.
Yeah.
Tell me one story about going through a dark time and how you saw yourself through. Then we're going to get into what you're doing today.
Well, so in the late 90s, I was running a bar, and I got this idea to open a coffee house, which was going to be like a daytime clubhouse, served coffee 24 hours a day. And I saw this is kind of before Starbucks even began, but I looked at the margins on coffee and liquor, and actually coffee is a better margin than alcohol, weirdly enough. And so I started on this path to open this coffee house. And it's a classic story of like everything that could go wrong did go wrong. It was like the city of West Hollywood went from outside building safety to bringing it internal, and we got a new guy. And I suddenly, what I thought it's a classic story of like being underfinanced. Like, I raised some money. I didn't raise enough, and I certainly didn't raise enough for a bump in the road, right?
Yeah.
So we hit a bump in the road. And so I suddenly found myself like, I'm going to lose the lease. And I did something really stupid and crazy. I borrowed money from the mob, right? Yes, it's real. That's a real story. And then what I ended up doing was every week I had to pay the juice on that. And then I was running this other bar at the time. And so what I would do is I would borrow money from the bar to pay the juice for this other business that I had. I would record it in the balance sheet, but not in the P&L. And I didn't tell my partners about it, which was really, really bad behavior. Now, I wasn't going to meetings. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't connecting with my sober community. And it was dark. And it got really dark, and I got suicidal. I got terrified, and and then there was like this moment where like Los Angeles Magazine came up with this tell-all story of like how I embezzled all this money. And it was like, so I had public humiliation on top of that. And then it was like right around that time, I met you. Shortly thereafter, like Deezer D, God rest his soul, was a friend of ours, and he was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And he kept telling me, you got to come here, my boy, Tim Storey. And I was like, I'm not into those new age guru guys. Get that new age guy away from me, he's a charlatan.
Exactly.
And so I said no so many times to Deezer, and he was so persistent, and I'm so grateful for his persistence. So anyone who feels like, read Abraham Lincoln's autobiography, right? That guy never stopped until he got what he was looking for, right? Like, persistence is a good thing. And so I ended up, coming clean with my partners, and and they went crazy and sued me. And I paid it all back, gave them retribution, gave them interest on their money. And then, and I met you. I go to the Hollywood Bible study.
Yeah.
You tell the story of sometimes you got to get left in order to get right. And I like have a cathartic experience. Like, I'm in the front row with Deezer.
Wow.
I break down, I'm crying. This story, you were speaking to me, you were telling me my story, and I was like, definitely had strayed from the light. And so we go back to the back room, we meet each other, we connect, we become friends. And I mean, this is probably 3 months into our friendship. We're not even that close of friends. And like, somehow it comes up that I owe the mafia money, and I'll get emotional.
Yeah, me too, though.
Tim gave me the money, paid off the mob, said, pay me back.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments in your life where you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't friends with you because of that. I was just like and I was figuring it out, right? Like I was figuring it out to my own way, but it was like one of those moments that was so dark and I didn't see any light anywhere. But I do know, like I said, I have this theme about making deals with God, you know, and I at that moment too, I also like went back to AA, went back to my 12-step program and started to work that and really have never stopped doing that since to this day. But it was like that moment where like I forgot my first estate.
Yeah.
I forgot my first estate. I went back to my first estate. I put one foot in front of the other. I focused on today. I met you miraculously. And you were not like anyone I'd ever met in the church world. Your gift of communication, the way you talk about the Bible, the way you study the Bible, the way you understand the Solomon lineage.
Yeah.
Right? And how you really study the Aramaic to understand what Christ was really talking about, right? And we talked about that so much with like my teacher, George, who was always like, go to the root word. Like, what's the Aramaic meaning of that? Because that's the perspective that Christ was coming from.
Exactly.
And it might not have been the Roman Catholic Church's perspective. It might be the total opposite, right?
It's true.
You know, and so we have so many conversations over that. But that was one of those dark moments where I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what would happen. I'd be in Las Vegas, like driving a limo for some.
But I think that
some guys.
It takes one to know one.
Yeah.
Of like pain of our childhood.
So thank you, Tim, for that.
Yeah.
You're a real friend.
You're welcome. But pain of our childhood, you got to help somebody out.
Yeah.
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 All right. That was funny that Ben Greenfield was trying to get in.
Yeah.
Did you see him?
Yeah, I love that man too.
We love Ben Greenfield, but he was trying to get in. We wouldn't let him in because we're doing this podcast right now.
He's not on the VIP list.
Okay. Tell me about.
No, Ben's always on the list.
Tell me about you doing a podcast, why you're excited about that, because people have been wanting you to do it because you did radio very successfully for a long time.
Yeah, I had a radio show on Indie 103.1 for like 5 years. I loved radio. It was such a great medium, and it was so fun to be on the mic doing that and playing music for people in Los Angeles. It's like the last great radio station, I think, in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm writing a memoir. So in that journey of just telling my journey from like birth to today of all the things I've lived through in life and getting up, getting down, like the story I just told about our friendship. And, you know, I've had this super blessed life. And so one of the themes that's come through with the book, with the writer, and what we're seeing is like this idea of making deals with God. So I'm going to launch a podcast called Making Deals with God, which is really about this moment of surrender to a higher power, God, Jesus, whatever, great architect of the universe, whoever that might be to you. Like, and this moment is just really having this inner dialogue of true surrender.
It's such a great idea.
You know, and really saying, what are those moments that we've all had where we've had this true moment of surrender, where we didn't know what the outcome was going to be, but we trusted in the fact that the outcome was going to be okay. And I think that's, you know, as I was coming over here, I was talking to a guy that I sponsor in the program, and he has a fear of flying. And I was like, well, have you asked God to help you with that? And
yeah.
He was like, well, no. Should I do that? I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. Like he can totally handle that problem.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
I think that's one of the best podcast names I've ever heard. It's that good.
That's great.
So we have the podcast, we have the book.
Yeah. I don't know when the book, we're working on the book now. We've got great pages, and we're going to get it out to publishers soon. Knock on wood. A friend of mine is a big publisher, and hopefully he takes it.
Yeah.
And but I think we're going to launch the podcast, you know, in the coming weeks, and you know, have some great guests on, and really like you're going to come on, and we're going to talk about your dark times.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. I don't usually talk about that, as you know.
But I think people need to know that Tim does struggle, and Tim has had dark nights of the soul, and Tim has found these moments and has made his own deals with God. And like, what is that? Because I think it's important. You know, failure is such a taboo word in the world. Like, we don't celebrate our failures. We don't talk about it. And I think if I've learned anything in the 12-step rooms, it's like everyone's failure is what gives us hope. Right?
Yeah.
There's hope in knowing that, like, oh, okay. I see it all the time in things like if it's Nitsa being pregnant and talking to other pregnant women, it's like, oh, there's that connection. But it's just that hope of like,
Yeah.
we can go to a better place. And you are so great at your communication of like, sometimes you're left to go right. And that place, I love that story that you told about God knows your frame.
Yes. He knows
Right?
our frame.
He
Yeah.
knows our frame.
Psalms 103.
Right. He'll put pressure on you. He'll
Yes.
push you. He'll push you, but he doesn't break you.
Exactly.
God damn, it hurts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
But if we can learn to hold that, accept that, and love that, I think miracles can happen.
I like that. Okay, so last question.
Yeah.
What does leading with love mean to you? So that's my new movement, to lead with love. What does leading with love mean to you?
Well, that's a good question. Leading with love to me is, so I had some relationship trouble last year that me and Nitsa had worked through, and we got with this great teacher named John Wineland.
Mm-hmm.
He's amazing. And one of these concepts that he was mentored by David Data, The Way of the Superior Man, great book. But one of these concepts that he has that resonated with me was this idea of tuning into your partner's nervous system.
Wow.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And asking yourself, how does my behavior affect that person's nervous system? Right?
Yeah.
This thing that's happening where neither side is tuning into either side's nervous system. Right? It's just a complete shutdown. And I think it's such a loving idea to be like, I don't agree with you. I don't even believe with what you're saying, but let me listen and let me tap into your nervous system so I can maybe have empathy and see and hear where you're coming from. I might not agree with you, but how can I listen to you and tap into your nervous system? Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. People want to be seen, heard, and understood. And so this concept of like attuning to your friend, your lover, your wife, your boss, your employees' nervous system, like what is my behavior? How is it going to affect the nervous system? How am I starting the conversation? So if I start the conversation a certain way, maybe that triggers their nervous system. And now they're like, the armor's up and they're ready for battle. And I was like, well, that wasn't what I was intending. I wasn't coming to you for a battle, but now there's a battle. Mm-hmm. And then they start throwing arrows at me. And then I'm like, I'm going to throw some arrows at you. And then we have it. What's that approach to enter the space of communication where there's not a battle?
Yeah, that's powerful, actually. Very powerful. Best way to follow you would be what?
I'm on Instagram, at Brent Bolthouse. I have Facebook, but I don't use it. I have a Twitter account I kind of use. I am going to start one, Instagram. I think we got Making Deals with God, but that isn't.
Nice.
So that's out there, and we'll do a website and all the things that come along with a podcast, I suppose. But yeah, just my own name. And obviously the Bungalows each have their own Instagram, and we just launched Bungalows on TikTok.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So follow Brent Bolthouse. What a privilege to talk to my real friend and for me to get emotional because we're very connected. So I'm glad that you guys are liking the Miracle Mentality podcast. Thank you for liking today, subscribing if you have not already, and continue to telling friends. I like to say this, you may not be what you want to be, but thank God you're not what you used to be. Life is still good. Thank you for sharing space with me on this episode of Miracle Mentality with Tim Storey. If today sparked your courage or helped you understand why you're created for success, I invite you to carry that miracle mentality forward. Visit me at timstorey.com. That's story with an EY on the end. Until next time, walk by faith, embrace possibility, and create your own comeback story.